Theory by Jason Delgado and William Calero. Chapter 7. Underneath It All. The team followed the tunnel, their footsteps echoing faintly into the confined space. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, carrying with it a faint metallic tang. The tunnel suddenly widened, opening into a cavernous processing center that seemed to hum with a quiet mechanical life. The vast space was bathed in an eerie bluish light that emanated from both the ceiling and the walls, reflecting off countless crystalline surfaces. Stretching out from the rock face were the crystal roots, translucent, shimmering structures that twisted and branched in intricate patterns, resembling the gnarled roots of ancient trees frozen in time. They pulsated faintly as though some hidden energy coursed through them, giving them the appearance of living veins beneath the Earth's surface. Each root seemed to glow faintly from within, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the cavern walls, blues, purples, and silvers that danced like ethereal fire. Robotic arms extended from the ceiling and walls, their movements precise and methodical. Each arm was equipped with a set of delicate instruments designed for the painstaking task of extracting the roots. The process was mesmerizing. The machines would hover over a root, emitting a soft, oscillating hum before carefully severing it from the rock face. As the severed crystals were lifted free, they emitted a faint musical chime, almost as if protesting their removal. The roots were then deposited onto a conveyor system that transported them behind a thick, reinforced glass barrier where more robotic systems further processed and refined them. The air was charged with an almost unnatural energy, as though the crystals themselves resisted the intrusion. A shimmering force field blocked the entrance to the processing area, its surface rippling like liquid light. Occasional sparks crackled along its edges, creating a faint, rhythmic sound, like a static hum of a distant storm. In front of the force field stood a sleek keypad, its interface glowing softly, its design starkly modern, against the backdrop of the ancient crystalline formations. Sully let out a low whistle, his eyes wide as he took in the surreal scene. "Double stuffed," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head slowly. His awe was unmistakable. The disbelief in his tone mirrored the astonishment etched in his face. Jake stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the processing center, unable to tear his eyes away from the spectacle. The sheer scale of the operation, the seamless precision of the automated systems, and the haunting beauty of the crystal roots left him momentarily speechless. He exhaled slowly, his voice tinged with amazement. "This is incredible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Behind the glass barrier, the extracted crystals piled into containment units, their faint glow dimming slightly as they were separated from the root system. It was as though the very act of mining them drained some intrinsic life force from the formations. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were witnessing something far beyond the scope of human understanding, a process that was once mechanical and sacred, scientific and otherworldly. Roland stepped forward, his eyes reflecting the glow of the force field. "This is extraordinary," he whispered. M's voice was filled with disbelief. "Who could have created all this?" Joshi, her eyes fixed on the crystals, spoke up. "We need one of those crystals." She watched as the robotic arm moved the extracted crystals onto a conveyor belt that led through the terminal room beyond the force field. Jake picked up the metal clip from his belt, tossing it at the force field. The energy barrier burned through the metal, the clip disintegrating as it hit the ground. "Well," Jake said, his voice grim. We're going to have to deal with that first. Joshi's eyes glinted with determination. That's what our omnipresent, super-intelligent AI friend is for. Theory? Theory's voice came through their earpieces. Is there a place you can connect me? Joshi crouched in front of the keypad, her fingers deftly pulling a small, sleek lens from her satchel. The device gleamed faintly under the low, artificial light, its surface edged with a grid of microscopic circuits. She held it up, nodding to herself. It's a keypad, but I can connect the haptic lens, she said, her voice steady despite the urgency in the air. That will work, Thera replied, its voice emanating from the small tablet in Joshi's hand. The lenses will interface directly with the laser emitters in your device. As Joshi began to work, the faint hum of the tunnel's oppressive silence was interrupted. M's head snapped up suddenly. She listened intently. A faint sound echoed through the tunnel, a deep, rhythmic thumping that was too steady to be natural. Her voice tensed. We need to move quickly, she said, urgency lacing every word. I think we have company. Jake turned sharply, his body going rigid as the noise reached his ears. It wasn't just footsteps. It was a mass and relentless tide of movement closing in. The tunnel seemed to amplify the sound, making it impossible to gauge their distance. He drew his weapon in one smooth motion, his eyes scanning the shadows at the far end of the tunnel. Stay as far back as you can, he ordered, his voice calm but firm. He glanced back at Em, her tone dropping. We've got a lot of company coming. The thumping grew louder, more defined, like a synchronized march of something far more coordinated than humans. Jake's grip tightened on his weapon. Joshi, he said, without turning. How much longer? I'm going as fast as I can, she muttered, her hands a blur as she worked. She attached the haptic lens over the camera on her tablet, the device snapping into place with a satisfying click. The lens activated, emitting a faint blue glow and its surface shimmering with tiny vibrations. Activating laser-inducing haptics, Theory said, its calm tone almost jarring against the mounting tension. From the lens, an invisible beam of focused energy reached out to the keypad, its precision guided by the tablet's camera. The laser vibrations created a phantom touch, pressing the keys one by one in rapid succession. On the screen, Joshi's tablet displayed the keypad's layout, the simulated presses lighting up as Theory worked through the sequence. Come on, Joshi whispered under her breath, her eyes darting between the screen and the keypad. The force field in front of them shimmered faintly, the protective energy pulsing with each passing second. Behind them, the footsteps swelled into a deafening chorus, a relentless stampede echoing off the tunnel walls. They're almost here, Jake asserted. Finally, the force field let out a low hum, the shimmering energy wavering before it collapsed entirely, leaving the path ahead clear. Joshi exhaled sharply, standing and stepping back. It's down! Jake didn't hesitate. Move, he barked, motioning for the team to push forward. As they rushed into the next room, the distant shapes of their pursuers began to emerge in the darkness. The team rushed inside, just as the mob of sleepers burst into view, running towards them with an unnatural fury. Joshi moved the Theory tablet to the keypad terminal inside the control room. As the mob converged on them, Theory managed to reactivate the force field, sealing the team inside the control room while the mob remained on the other side. A few sleepers tried to push through the energy barrier, their bodies burning as they screamed in pain. Jake raised his hand, his voice desperate. Stop! Please! We mean you no harm. What is this? But the sleepers continued, their minds lost, their bodies driven by a force beyond their control. They threw everything they had at the force field. Rocks, sticks, even themselves. The scene was chaotic, their rage palpable. "Please stop," Jake shouted, his heart pounding. "We mean you know." His words trailed off as he realized that these people, men, women, and young ones, were not acting of their own volition. "It's like they're under intense hypnosis," he said, his voice low. "Like zombies." Roland's face was pale. "Sleepers, actually. Which is even worse because they're still alive." Jake shook his head. Disbelief etched across his features. "Mind control? On this scale?" Sully's face was grim. "Welcome to the truth." The mob continued their assault, their shouts echoing off the rock walls, the force fields crackling with energy as it held them back. Some of the sleepers fell, their bodies smoldering as they burned, unable to stop themselves. Joshi, her eyes wide with urgency, worked at a nearby terminal, trying to control one of the robotic arms mining the crystals on the other side of the plexiglass. The arm moved with precision, but slowly, cutting away at the crystal root. "I'm getting the crystal now," she called out, her voice shaking. "Come on." Suddenly, the mob fell silent, their movements ceasing as they stood at attention, their eyes staring blankly ahead. Em looked at them, a chill running down her spine. "Something's happening," she whispered. Jake's gaze sharpened. "And it doesn't look good." One of the sleepers stepped forward, approaching the keypad outside the force field. The sleeper's fingers moved swiftly, pressing buttons at random, attempting to bypass the barrier. Theory's voice came through, tense. "They're going to unlock it. Get me to the terminal. I can change the passcode." Theory began typing furiously, the keys on the terminal clicking as they worked to change the code. The sleeper continued, its movements frantic, a race between the AI and the controlled human. More of the mob began to push through the force field, their bodies burning as they fell, their screams filling the tunnel. Sully grabbed his drill, his face set with determination. "We gotta go," he said, looking to Joshi. Joshi shook her head, her eyes glued to the robotic arm. "I haven't gotten the crystal yet." The arm finally cut through the crystal, lifting it from the wall and placing it onto the conveyor belt on the other side of the room. Joshi rushed towards it, her heart pounding. The force field was beginning to descend, the energy shimmering as it weakened. "They got through," Theory's voice warned, the urgency unmistakable. The force field dropped, and the sleepers pushed forward, their movements wild and aggressive. "Stand back!" Sully shouted, the voice echoing through the tunnel. He aimed the drill at the wall behind them, firing it and blasting through the rock. The stone and dirt concaving in on itself, pushing the debris at an upward angle, creating a path. Suddenly, air burst through the hole, forming at the surface, opening a new exit back up. The buzzing machine whirled to a halt. The team ran for the opening, their hearts pounding. Jake turned back for Joshi, his eyes locking onto her as the mob surged closer. "Joshi, we gotta go, now!" he shouted. "Don't shoot them, Jake!" Joshi yelled back, her voice desperate. "They're asleep!" Jake looked at his weapon, then at the approaching mob. He grabbed a flashbang grenade from his vest, pulling the pin and throwing it towards the sleepers. "Joshi, cover up!" Jake shouted. The grenade exploded in a blinding burst of light, the sharp bang reverberating through the tunnel. The sleepers recoiled, their movements jerky and uncoordinated as the grenade's disorienting effect bought the team precious seconds. Jake grabbed Joshi's arm, pulling her towards the newly created exit where the others were waiting. "Move, now!" Sully barked, already at the opening, his drill smoking as he stood ready for what came next. The team scrambled through the gap, coughing as dust and debris fell around them. Jake was the last to pass, turning just in time to see the mob recovering, their blank eyes once again locking onto the team. "Seal it!" Roland shouted. The roar of falling rock echoed through the air as Sully blasted the hole behind them closed, caving it in with a deafening crash. Dust billowed in thick plumes, surrounding the team in a haze of gray as jagged shards of stone tumbled, sealing off the path of return. Sully's face was set with determination, his gloved hand gripping the still smoking handle of the device that had sealed their fate. He turned back towards the group, his eyes meeting theirs, resolute, fierce. There was no turning back now. The team moved quickly, their bodies low, as they navigated the uneven terrain of the park, their breaths coming in ragged bursts. It felt like they were racing against time, their every step a desperate beat in a drum of survival. They knew they had to put as much distance as possible between themselves and whatever nightmare lay behind that collapsed wall. The night was a cloak around them, shadows twisting through the moonlight pines, each leaf rustling like a whispering warning, and the distant calls of nocturnal animals sounded like echoes of another world. Jay Castillo led them through, his senses heightened, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The path was unfamiliar, filled with unseen threats, but it was also their only way out. Thank you for listening, and buy your copy of Theory today, available on Amazon.